I'm a little frustrated by a person who's frustrated me on a few occasions in the past, needless to say. Multiple, many occasions in the past. Cone Man. So, the thing is, different people use words for different reasons, right? And different people read words in different ways. So, Cone Man left a very frustrating comment where he said basically a couple of different things, but like, I don't see what the problem is that I have a different opinion about objective morality than you do, Eric. And of course, it's frustrating because it's not my opinion, right? Mean bird, hi. It's you know, I'm explaining things in a way that's the exclusively correct, right? It's not my opinion. It's correct versus incorrect when it comes to objectivity and morality. People can use the terms in various ways, but not it's not meaningfully correct unless it means something specific, right? Hi, Dad Boy Klaus. Hi, Winston's mom. Of course, Cone Man says things like, "Oh, you seem to be saying that I'm not smart enough to understand what you're saying," or something like that. I didn't say that, right? You keep interpreting my words to mean things they don't say. That's why it's frustrating to me. My brother and I got into an argument yesterday based on me disagreeing with the claim actions speak louder than words. Right. Well, because of course actions don't speak at all. Actions are entirely different category of things than words. It's not the case that in every instance multiple people's opinions are equally valid. You know, when it comes to arguing, whether or not how we can understand morality and objectivity, it's like what I'm saying is indisputably correct, and to the extent that people are saying things exclusive of it, they are wrong. It's not open to debate, right? Like, I mean, you can try to debate as much as you want, but because you are not ever going to be able to contradict what I'm saying successfully, you're not going to be able to rebut it successfully because it's correct, and that's just all there is to it, Uh, it's we know it's correct because no matter how much you argue against it, or anybody argues against it, it wins the arguments. So I'm making descriptive statements of fact, like the word objectivity is used by people in two distinct ways. Well, really three, but one of them is just ridiculous. Some people use the word objective or objectively to mean correct, which is just silly. But the other ways people use the word is to mean like literally of the object, right? But refers to people's ways of calculating things. Hello from Texas. Sometimes I poop too much. Better than pooping too little, Mr. Chris Matthew 33. Well, yeah, of course we should disagree with it because what it's basically saying is, I'll believe you when you follow through, but only some kinds of Words are promises or indications of what one will do. For example, the words that speak loudest of all are not words about what I'm going to do. They're words about reality as a whole. Well, thank you, Mr. Chris Matthew. Like, what I'm going to do is localized of significance. But what's correct about the universe applies to the universe. So obviously, words that self-report, I mean, words that self-report again are just localized in their relevance, right? So it's words like I'm saying about objectivity that are the ones that matter the most because they're descriptions of the universe. Just like Codeman can certainly have a different opinion regarding, say, spontaneous generation. Hi, Slenderman. Yes, I will pull some bowls in a second. Codeman is welcome to have the opinion, obviously, that in fact spontaneous generation is why flies appear or maggots appear in rotting meat. And I could say, no, it's that flies lay eggs. He can have a different opinion than I have, but his is an opinion, or in other words, his is a personally selected wrongness, and I'm accurately explaining what happens and why. Perez Garcia, hello. Bienvenidos. Bienvenidos. Talking with famous people. I mean, I think Coneman is a ESFP or an ENFP, you know? That's why he doesn't, like, he thinks he can figure out what I'm trying to say to him without parsing the actual words for what they mean. So that's why he said, it seems to me that Eric, you seem to be saying that I'm stupid. I was never saying that at all, of course. I was just saying this is a good example of how different people use words very differently. So he uses words to express himself, and accordingly, all opinions are equal, right? Whereas I use words to convey meaning. I don't think Coneman's here in the chat. I'm just responding to. I got a slew of comments from him recently. But the thing is, this what makes it an almost impossible task for me to figure out how to communicate with him is because he's not listening to the words I'm saying for their meaning and parsing it in like in like a normal adversarial way that I would do things. He's looking for, I guess, my underlying motivations or something. Because like the comments that he leaves on some of these videos suggest to me that like they're indications for sure that he's definitely not listening to what I say, or he's not understanding what I say, or something like that. Because it's like I explained to him in that video, I explained to everybody in that video that people can use objectivity to mean certain things, right? And he's using objective to just mean true or correct or something. But that's not meaningfully a way to engage topic. Oh no, he's definitely ESFP or ENFP. Right. I mean, it is the case that we cannot conceive of that for which we do not have words. And rigorously engaging words is what separates us from the animals. It's what protects us from barbarity, you know? Did I mention that, yeah, it's on the, I could, let me see, it still shows up here. Oh, it's on the last live stream, I guess. Yeah, I think it's on the last live stream. And also, and he says like on this one, right? On the short, is it and he says it's called an opinion I'm trying to understand. Are you trying to understand though? I mean, it's possible you're trying to understand, but I don't think that this is the kind of reasoning that is compatible with your attentional matrix. It's like there's no way you can't get TI polar to engage with language in the same way as FI polar. Realistically, you can't expect that to happen. It's one person's listening to words for definitional boundaries, the other person is ignoring those. So the thing is, we can only make certain kinds of predictions. We might make promises to people in the future, like, I promise I'll go to your recital tomorrow, honey. But if you crash on the way there, then you're not going to be there for it, right? You can make these assurances, you can state your intentions, but it's difficult to reasonably expect anybody to always follow through on what they say they will do because, like I said, the world's chaotic. Unintended things happen. All right, let's pull a couple more rips. Like, if I were going to try to engage Cone Man about what he says regarding, like he says, whether or not morality is objective is open to debate and is the subject of plenty of debate. Of course, what I would say is, well, what do you mean by objective? And then already we're going to run into problems, right? Because he doesn't know what he means by objective, but he thinks he does. Because he thinks that words can mean specific things without determinate and operationalized definitions. But they can't. You can express yourself with words that don't mean anything, but you can't convey information that way. So I've been a little bit obsessed lately reading about, or watching YouTube videos about, not reading. I don't know why I said reading. Watching YouTube videos about the Diddy case and other like celebrity butt fuckery. You know, like I really, I really think that. I mean, obviously, I have no way to prove this definitively or anything, but I really think that Ashton Kutcher murdered a lady back in the day. And if you look into this conspiracy theory or whatever you want to call it, I think you'll find that it's pretty sus. Is Demi Moore dead? I don't know. Cone Man, Bobby, Fomalhaut, Cloud. Fomalhaut does not belong in that list of people at all. Bobby is different. You know, Bobby and Cloud are different than Cone Man too. Cone Man is trying to engage with me as pleasantly as possible, you know, like or as you know, he's trying to have happy engagements with me about a subject that presumably we're both interested in, right? But because I believe in exclusive correctnesses and he believes in non-exclusive correctnesses, and that frame underlies the fundamental communication gap that we have, right? But it's very difficult, obviously, to convey information to somebody who doesn't parse things that way, you know. Ashton Kutcher may be an ESP, but the thing is, you know how he and Mila Kunis wrote this letter of support for Danny Masterson? Well, I think, and this is just my opinion, right? But nevertheless, I believe it to be the case that Danny Masterson helped Ashton Kutcher cover up the murder. The thing is, like, he was definitely there. According to the official story, he arrived shortly after the murder, and that's why his fingerprints were all over the doorknob and stuff. And went away when the woman didn't answer the door. But I'm not buying it because of some social media post from one of Danny Masterson's ex-girlfriends saying to Ashton Kutcher basically, like, I know what you did last summer, you know. And the date that she mentioned that she knew when he had done something was that date. Where is your queen? You mean Rachel? She's asleep still. It's only 11 in the morning. New photo shows UFO hovering over Canada before it was shot down by U.S. jet. Let's look at that. That's not a very useful image. One email from Canadian Brigadier General Eric LaForest described the UFO as a cylindrical object. Top quarter is metallic, remainder white, 20-foot wire hanging below with a package of some sort suspended. Best description we have. Well, That's the best description they have, I guess. SI and NI have always been difficult for me to discern between without directly testing it. It's tough to tell how much of his SI maintenance is a result of his wife's help. I see. I would lean ENTJ, but he doesn't often tell stories with a great amount of detail. Well, that's consistent with ENTJ. I'd expect ESTJ to tell stories with a great deal of detail. I see. Yeah. Okay, but to deny objective or subjective as applying to morality implies it is not an abstract concept. It is an abstract concept when it clearly is not. It doesn't make any sense at all, right? Objectivity or subjectivity, like they're not implicit to the thing you're engaging necessarily, right? They're references to data or ways of deliberating. Jung doesn't have a meaningful definition here, right? We need a definition that we can use to determine whether something qualifies as that. So obviously, a morality itself can neither be objective nor subjective because those are ways of paying attention, kind of. They're frames of paying attention. They're not implicit to objects. My guitar isn't objective, right? This isn't objective. Why would morality be objective? The point is, we can be objective about morality, and that looks like deontological moral reasoning, basically. Should that be the actual fount of everyone's moral impulses? Not necessarily, and I'm sure it's not particularly the fount of many people's moral impulses. But the thing is, what I'm doing is I'm distinguishing between things that mean specific things, right? I'm not just bullshitting, not just full of metaphor or whatever. Okay, well, I'm not really interested in what Jung says, Winston. I'm explaining to everybody what is the case. Okay. So, and the reasons why it is the case. So if anybody wants to dispute that it is the case, they need to rebut my explanations. I'm not interested in what Jung says. As long as my explanations continue to stand, in the absence of rebuttal, they continue to have primacy, and that's all there is to it. That's the way the world works. I don't think I agree with Jung, though, right? To deny objective or subjective as applying to morality does not imply that it's an abstract concept. It would imply that it's not an abstract concept, right? Because we can be, it doesn't have anything to do with abstraction. We can be objective about concrete shit. We can be objective about abstract stuff. We can be subjective about concrete stuff. We can be subjective about abstract stuff. It's insane to think that Cone Man is not using abstract language, even though he's wrong about everything. Does that mean because he's discussing abstract things that he's being objective? Of course not. Does it mean that whatever abstractions you're saying are objective? Of course not. Of course not. So Jung's totally wrong, right? He couldn't be any wronger because morality has nothing to do with abstraction or concreteness. Nor does objectivity or subjectivity has nothing to do with abstractness or concreteness. Morality is probably both, right? Like we have a conscience that probably is informed a lot more by our our experience and authentic responses or subjective responses to things than it is by our objective responses to things. Nevertheless, when we're talking about morality as we ought to deem its statuses and what conclusions we ought to draw about it, then in that instance, what we need to remember is that we're talking about morality that we can all agree on. We're never gonna agree on positive indications of morality, what ought people do. We're never gonna agree on that. But we can agree on what makes sense, provided yeah. That's the thing about conditionality, right? It's like, well, the point is, what Jung says there is wrong because he's guilty of a category error. So it's not the case that abstraction and concreteness link to objectivity or subjectivity at all. And the reason we know that is because of the things they've been able to say about it, right? Like, if in fact abstraction and concreteness links to objectivity or subjectivity, if in fact we were to say that objectivity, subjectivity either does or does not apply to morality because of the failure to, or because of the linkage to abstraction, right? Then we're necessarily wrong, because I can point out examples of both concrete and abstract things that a person can be either objective or subjective about. So I could be objective about Taco Bell and tell you facts that are not in dispute, like calorie counts, ingredients, and things like that. That doesn't require me to be objective, but it's an example of something that doesn't require subjectivity. On the other hand, telling you how much I like Taco Bell is something that requires me to express my subjectivities. Hi Wolfpack 7483. Kiss was my favorite band as a kid. When I was a kid, they were my favorite band. What fuels stoicism? I think it's a desire to convert philosophy into action or into something prescriptive, right? But philosophy is really suitable for normative calculations, aesthetic calculations, ontological and epistemological calculations, but it's not really intended to be a prescription for how to live. That's more in the category of religion, for the reasons I indicated already, which is there's no universality to come on, Eric, don't lose your train of thoughts. There's no universality to positive moral, to prescriptive things, to positive indications. You should do this. There's no universality to that. It's impossible to say what somebody should do because you don't know what they're capable of, among other things, right? So people will say, well, a person should go save a drowning child. And you go, well, what if the person can't swim themselves? And you go, okay, well, a person should go save a drowning child if they can. Well, then that's no longer universal if you say if they can. It needs to be all instances or none, or it's not. It's either all instances or something else. So, Stoicism is really a prescription for how to live. It's kind of like ISTPs play imitation philosophy. Regardless, the thing is, it's not difficult to understand what I'm saying. Whenever somebody says, if you look at it objectively, what they mean is you're not agreeing with me because of your feelings. That's what they mean. If somebody says, but it's objectively so, again, what they're saying is, if you don't agree with me, it's because of your feelings. In other words, they're saying, I'm being objective and you're not. So the thing is, that's all that means. But people think it means something else. Is morality objective? You know, again, is this objective? That's not how the word works, right? It's not the sort of thing that's an adjective describing nouns. Like this is an objective flashlight. It doesn't make any sense to use it that way. And if you did, all you'd be meaning by it was just like correct, true. And then at that point, the word is adding nothing to your sentence, right? Because it's like, if I say, it is true that I like pizza, and I say I like pizza, then I'm saying the exact same thing. Anytime you make a statement, it's implied, it is true that, or I believe that, or both. I believe that it is true that. I'm not even objecting to it. I mentioned that I get a little frustrated. I do find it very interesting, and I wonder, how can I communicate with him? So I thought I explained it pretty well in that video, although it wasn't the simplest explanation in the world. But I think what Coman is not getting is that I mean exactly what I say with the words that I'm using. So it should be clear via this conversation that in fact it's either meaningless, it's meaningless no matter what to say objective morality. It does not mean true morality. It does not mean can be calculated objectively. If it does mean that, then yes, morality, like anything else requiring calculation, can be calculated either objectively or subjectively. So, I mean, what's frustrating is when come in and says like, well, I don't see what the problem is. It's just an opinion. When he says things like this, the topic about whether or not morality is objective is open for debate. In fact, there is an ongoing debate about the subject, and it's not resolved or anything. Okay, well, I mean, I just resolved it then, right? Because it's not like some genius observation. It's very straightforward. That's it. If you think it means true, that's not what it means. And if you do use it as that, you're not saying anything, right? If you use it as it actually means something, then you have people either using an objective or subjective calculus on things, or you have data that's objective, which means everybody can look at it equally. These are the ways that people use the word, okay? They either use it just to mean it is true that, they use it to mean you're not agreeing with me because of your feelings. They use it to mean, but actual good meaning for it, which is disinterested or interested calculus, or they use it to refer to data that everybody can reference equally. These are all the ways that people use the word. So it's not like it's especially complicated, right? It should be very straightforward for people to understand this. I don't know how to explain it any better, right? There's no correct way or meaningful way to say objective morality. It's a category error, as I explained in these videos, right? But I don't know what he's listening to, because if he were listening to what I was saying, he wouldn't suggest that it's like open for debate or something, right? I'm not making position statements about whether or not morality is objective. I'm explaining why that's a category error. And it's indisputably so. So whoever wants to disagree with me, they need to rebut what I'm saying first in order to claim that their opinion has any validity at all if they disagree with me. There are many moral foundations through which we might view a thing, right? For example, care, harm, fairness, cheating, loyalty, betrayal, authority, subversion, sanctity, degradation, and liberty, oppression. But moral reasoning, which is distinct from how people experience morality, it is the kind of reasoning upon which we base our codifications of morality called law, which I also indicated in this video, is the expression of morality that matters most, because it's what allows us to have, say, a model penal code. Without principles that help to constrain what we as a group do, and what I as an individual do, it always ends in disaster, right? So there are myriad examples of it. I don't want to even come up with a bunch of examples. It's just going to make me mad. But the thing is, that's why we always need to calculate legitimacy first, because the ends don't justify the means, and accordingly, right? These kinds of principles emerge from normative reasoning or moral reasoning, not from the personal experience of morality. It is absolutely the case that I am moral far more for reasons like, yes, defensibility is important to me, and accordingly, I abide by the conclusions of normative reasoning. But the thing is, at least as significant, is I don't want to feel bad later, right, for being a dick or something. Whether or not that comprises something that's morally impermissible depends on whether it comprises a right violation, a rights violation. And so, there's plenty of things that I would consider bad to do that aren't technically morally impermissible. Being rude to somebody isn't morally impermissible, but I would prefer not to be. Being mean to somebody, saying something mean to somebody, is not morally impermissible. But I'd prefer not to do it anyway. It's, in my opinion, morally indicated that I should be better than the minimum. And I think probably most people agree with that, right? But that's not something that one can logically establish. So you'll note that what I'm doing here is I'm parsing out areas of morality that you cannot come to a specific statement or resolution or conclusion and then successfully defend that. In these areas of morality, nobody can successfully defend any arguments making claims of positive moral universalities, right? In this limited area, we can make claims and defend them against all counters regarding what we can objectively know about morality. Remember, that's we're being objective, not morality. So the thing is, who defines it? Again, this is observationally so. We just look at the universe and we'll note that it's possible to tell people what they can't do morally, that it's possible to tell people what they must do morally. It's possible to tell people what they can do morally, but don't have to. Right? Can you come up with any other possible moral statuses? One could possibly say that something is wicked some of the time. Okay, but if that's the case, then it's more complicated than a simple rights violation. And at the end of the day, it would come down to whether the circumstances tweak such that it is a rights violation or is not. Yeah, a descriptive sense and a normative sense. So what we can explain in terms of universality is very limited because it has to be something that every person on earth has the obligation to uphold, with the normal caveats regarding age, which is to say, an initial naive attempt at a descriptive definition of morality might take it to refer to the most important code of conduct put forward by a society. Right. Well, that's, yeah. Instead, we describe descriptive definitions of morality. The point is what even great philosophers and stuff don't quite get in full, that I get, I have an advantage over the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, for example, is because I was a debate coach. So I understand which things resolve argumentationally at the end of the day, having argued all this shit a million times, right? I get that other people haven't argued it as much, so they're not going to feel as immediately, it's not going to seem immediately obvious to them or something, but the point is, regarding morality, I'm not trying to define morality. I'm not arguing with Cone Man about the definition of morality. I'm arguing with Cone Man about the definition of objective and subjective, right? Dick Cheney is worse. Who's Dick Cheney? Wartime presidents have it tough. Maybe they do. Maybe they do. So, it's frustrating when I explain all of that and then somebody comes back and says, but whether or not morality is objective or subjective is still open to debate and is not resolved at all. I mean, what I just explained wasn't that it was one or the other resolved, is that that thing is a category error, right? But it just fell entirely on deaf ears. Morality is proper conduct. Well, I must be very proper then. That's how people be proper. That's how they walk when they're proper. Do you have situations in which you suspend your moral judgment? I mean, most situations are not are not moral situations. They're not situations where you have to make moral choices. You know, they're, I think by and large, people have, if unless they're actively choosing to violate rights, they're some kind of criminal or something. Most people, most of the decisions they make are not moral decisions. So most of the time, moral judgment doesn't come into it. I mean, the fact that I'm continually not violating somebody else's rights doesn't require particularly any judgment, just for me to sit at home, right? And even if I were to go out in the world, it just requires me to I mean, it's not like I'm inclined to violate rights. So it doesn't require me to exercise any self control. Since the universalizable rights are the ones that tell us what we can't do, once you habituated yourself to not doing those things, namely stealing, hitting people, you know, stuff like that. Okay, Kitty, you know I don't really like it when you sit here. I know you love to sit there, but go back over there. Let me see what's going on here. Do you think that sometimes people bring into their everyday thinking something like moral judgment, even in the case where, as you said, most situations aren't moral? Sure. I mean, I think probably F types feel as though there's implicit moral judgment to treating people well or poorly, whereas I see that as not really a matter of moral reasoning at all. I find myself in those situations a lot, actually. For example, I won't do some stuff like stare at a dude's girlfriend because I wouldn't want to someone to disrespect me that way. Okay, well, I guess that's I mean, it would seem to me the way, if that's your reasoning, I guess it's the golden rule. I mean, certainly that's a form of moral reasoning. It's like a shorthand moral reasoning, right? Um, what is the treatment of people a matter of? I agree that it's not a moral matter. I mean, what I should say is it is a moral matter, but it's not one about which we can reason. So it it's one of those positive moral indications. You have to have some other you have to have whatever justifications you have for treating people well. It could be utilitarian, or probably for most people it's not any justifications at all. It's just habit, right? But to me, I think we do have a positive moral indication to treat people well and to be kind instead of mean, you know? But that's not universalizable. That's for me. And if somebody else isn't nice and is nasty in some instance, well, maybe the person they're being nasty to totally deserves it, you know? That's very plausible. So, the positive moral indication would be, you know, be cool anyway, forgive, or something like that. But I'm not necessarily sure that's the best thing to do, really. Then this is why it's not universalizable, right? Because I think in some instances, certainly, people need to set healthy boundaries. For example, saying I won't physically harm this person because it's wrong, though I could do it, versus someone who isn't capable of it and too weak to do anything. Right. So, I won't physically harm this person because it's wrong. The thing is, it's more like I won't physically harm this person because if I do, I can't win the argument afterwards. Right? There's no way to win the argument afterwards if you punch somebody in the face. Especially if they don't fight back, you're really screwed, right? So that's strength to me anyway. That's good character, not taking advantage when you could. I agree with you, Caroline, about that. I think that's good character, and the minimum that people should aspire to is to be non-exploitative. And that's really deontology's message as well, is don't use other agents as a means to an end, but rather treat them as ends in themselves. Hi, Rubinar. Some chick hits on you, you know the guy, and you turn her down, you don't have to do it. Right. Well, and then there's the difficult question of should you tell that guy that his girl hit on you? Probably not, because if they stay together, they're never going to speak to you again. Ruminar, well, I think when you say here, I never saw the golden rule as fitting me. Yes, I treat them well, but not because that's how I'd like to be treated. I think of it more as what's the most scalable way to act in all situations. I think that Hero Lamb's understanding of things and Ruben's understanding of things represent FI and FE respectively. I think FI puts themselves in the other person's shoes. FE says, basically, if I do this, I'm not going to win the perception battle. Or, like you say, that some sort of other kind of universality versus particularism argument. The true golden rule is not to start violent behavior. Well, it is the case. I don't think that's the golden rule, but that aggression is defined as initiating use of force, essentially, without adequate justification. If you are choosing to interact with somebody and there they are in front of you, they are probably the most important person in the world in that moment, so they should be treated as such. Am I treating you enough like the most important person in the world right now, Alec T? Hi, Chodabai. It's true, I don't usually put myself in their shoes, says Rubinar. Well, I think this is where I run afoul sometimes of FI commenters and such, or I used to run afoul sometimes of this in the stream more when I used to smoke cigarettes, but like people telling me what to do because they think it's healthy for me. You know, like people telling me to vape instead of smoke cigarettes. People telling me to quit smoking. People telling me all kinds of. I do not like being told what to do at all. It's not their business. Fuck off, you know? In other words, they were doing, in that instance, harm prevention because they care about me, purportedly. You know? I just see it as like surely they must be doing this on purpose to annoy me, right? Because I I just cannot stand being told what to do. And then there's this confusion, like that one guy said, "Do you know why I did this, Eric? I did it out of love." This is a different subject, but what is the importance of secularity? Well, I mean, I think it's important that you keep your governance and your religion separate. And the reason for that is because if your if religion gets into governance, then there's no way to win any arguments. So it's like, who wins the argument about what this religious text means? Since nobody can actually win the argument, since it's open to myriad interpretations, or none, depending on your interpretation of the Bible, right? Um, it turns out to be like the most senior religious official gets to decide arbitrarily what it means. And there's no purpose to parliamentary procedure because debating is no longer seen as the means to get to the truth. It's not an investigative discursive process any longer that determines which laws should be passed, but rather it's an authority down kind of model where the person who's considered the most expert on religion gets to decide everything. As far as secularity in one's individual life, I mean, different people have different levels of secularity. Typically, the Islamic world tends to be a lot more religious than the non-Islamic world. But, and Europe is very non-religious. But theocracy, or I guess in general, the infusion of religion into politics, is just one of a number of threats to free and civil society. I think the biggest threat to the citizen democracy is the failure of people in both parties to accept a dispassionate calculation as the default preferable way to engage politically, because the various parties, the two parties, have gone 100% all in on wedge issues, outrage politics, culture war shit. Most importantly, they've gone all in on not genuinely engaging discursively, like having bullshitting, dissembling, either refusing to engage discursively in any meaningful way, like Trump, or just bullshitting nonstop, like Harris. It's this country was founded by statesmen. And it is time for another intellectual statesman to be president. We cannot just continue to allow the country to be steered by idiots, fools, and buffoons. I need my glasses so I can look at my plants. And the chat, of course. Can't see the chat either. So get my glasses. What will save the world is the same thing that Cone Man doesn't get, right? It's that it's possible to determine the exclusive correct position on something argumentationally. And accepting that reality is the first prerequisite to a strong and free country, you know? Because to the extent that we're not using argumentation to determine what's correct in a dispassionate fashion, then we are choosing to throw aside our single best tool to make good decisions. There's no other better way to make good decisions collectively than adversarial discourse. You know, it's important to remember as well that the country, I mean, that would be fine. I have no problem talking to him. But I don't know if it would do any good, right? Maybe it would. I would like to talk to him if he would listen to me. But it's like, this is the thing I want to just continually drive home. The whole point of that video that I made was that saying morality is objective or subjective is a category error. Conman responded with, but whether or not morality is objective or subjective is an open debate. In other words, he didn't get that what I had explained, that there's no correct way to say those words. Objective reality. I mean, objective morality, you know? It's like saying, what kind of dog is that? That's actually a cow. Hey, but we don't know at all whether it's a Great Dane or a Chihuahua. It's still actively being debated. No, what I'm saying is that's not a dog at all. It's a cow. I mean, it's like, how can you not get that, right? How can you like respond to what I had said like that? It's inconceivable to me. But I guess I do kind of understand how and why that happens. It happens because, you know, he and I do not have the same way of deliberating. Wow. Oh my MFG. This is so delicious looking. Look at this shit. Oh, I know, she's horrible. Prosecutors are all horrible. As a prosecutor, when I talk with a victim of a crime or a witness, I never ask them, are you Democrat or Republican? The first thing I would ask them is, are you okay? Uh-huh. What about the people you were prosecuting? Did you ask them if they were okay? Did you care about them at all? Did you think maybe it would be a good idea to be fair to them? Did that occur to you? No? Look at that juiciness. Oh my God. This stuff is amazing looking. I don't know what she is, but she's got, I think she's an ESTJ or ESFJ because she's got to be NI polar. Her NI polar seems to just punch me in the face. I can't believe how much I don't like that woman. And when it's like, before I saw her first commercial or two, I was like, well, I don't know really anything about her. I'll find out, maybe she'll win me over. As soon as I heard one commercial from her, I was like, oh my God. How could anybody have so little intuition? She just doesn't think that truth matters at all. She does not care about it one bit. Doesn't care about whether she's being honest, dishonest. She just thinks that because, like, if I could defend this at some point with some bullshit, then I'm not lying. Which is, of course, completely nonsense. So I've determined that, in fact, even though I've been saying this whole time, like, only 4 of the 5 different possible plants came up. In fact, we have all 5 different strains. It's just that this one, that either this one or that one is Jack, and the other one is Super Skunk. They look very similar in their buddings, but their leaves are different colors, look a little different, you know. They smell a little different too. So I don't know which one this one is. It might be the Super Skunk, which would explain why it's so big, I guess. Bam. Look at that. Bam. This is just starting to... God damn it, be still. This is just starting to... I mean, not just starting to, but... This is not done budding yet. It's going to wait till a couple weeks still. This one's more or less, I think, ready to go. But I don't feel any need to rush things. Yeah, well, do you think that sometimes it's not okay to tell the truth? Yeah. But not in a universally defensible way. Like, the thing is, I also, when presented with something to evaluate, if I think it's terrible, I don't just say that, right? I say, I find something I can like about it, or say that it sounds like they're doing something good. You know, and that's something that maybe I didn't always understand, right? But I'm a more sensitive person now than I used to be. For a lot of reasons, I guess. It's a lovely day today, kind of warm. The weather thing on the computer's very hot weather for this week. I wouldn't call this very hot. I'd call it very warm. Very warm or just regular hot. Maybe later in the day it'll be regular hot. Right now it's just warm. It's not even very warm. So remember to always question whether you should trust Microsoft when it tells you the weather. I don't think you can trust Bill Gates. I hate the way that Bill Gates thought it was fine for him to be all evasive when asked about Jeffrey Epstein. Like, fuck you. Well, he's dead now. No, dude. Be held fully accountable for whatever. Like, make sure that you are at least willing to explain instead of just avoiding. What Dickwad. Why does the Heritage Foundation say she is soft on crime? Well, yeah, the Heritage Foundation is very partisan. And I am, in no way, shape, or form do I think that she's soft on crime. That's my least concern, right? What the country needs is not a president who's more tough on crime or more soft on crime. What the fuck does the federal government have to do with the vast majority of criminal investigations anyway? Yes, the Heritage Foundation is partisan. I mean, it's hard to find anything that's not. I mean, I don't even know if they're partisan. They're historically what people would call conservative. Probably at this point, they just align themselves with the Republican Party. The thing is, I will answer your question in a second, Alec T. Alec T asks, do you think we can alter people's destinies? I'll answer that now, and then I'll go back to Harris. Yeah, I do. I know because I've altered plenty of people's destinies as a debate coach. For example, I started coaching David Dosh in debate when he was in 6th grade. He went on to become ultra serious debater all through high school, and then went on to coach his sister Danielle Dosh, who was also an ultra serious debater, to 11 TOC bids, which I think may have set the record. So it's like, did I change that family's direction? Yeah, absolutely. Prior to that, he had been into baseball. He had been playing Little League, but he wasn't particularly good, small kid. So when did the presidential election become a joke? Was it in your lifetime? Or no, it was in my lifetime. I think that, Reagan over Mondale, that was fine, even though Reagan was iffy as a president, but it was a fine election, Bush Sr. over whoever he ran against, I forget. It was a fine enough election. Clinton was a fine enough election, the 2 Clinton elections. I don't remember who he ran against either. It is the case that there was a lot of partisan vitriol under Clinton, and I think less so under Bush W. I mean, Bush's dad, Bush Sr. And the thing is, of course, there was why the Republicans hated Bill Clinton so much, I do not know. And no sane person could say his presidency was bad at all. Direction can change, sure. Is direction destiny? Well, that's a good question. Well, I mean, you're destined for one destination by going this direction. If I change your direction, I change your destination. And destiny refers to the inevitability of a given destination. I don't know what my destiny is. I seem to have had a lot of great people around me, like people around me doing great things and me being a part of that in some way. But not me myself doing particularly great things. Yeah, partisan nonsense is different than the outright mockery we have today. Yeah, I mean, these days forget about even the partisanship that occurs today being much more severe than it used to be. Like, in the sense that politics didn't used to just be about outrage politics stuff and wedge issues. That was something I think Newt Gingrich came up with, was like started pushing the wedge issues on the conservative base. Then, sure enough, the Democrats followed suit. But perhaps more significant is, I don't remember ever having an election with such terrible candidates as Trump and Hillary until this election with Trump and Harris. Biden, even though he was starting to get dementia, if you ignored that fact, he would have been, he's the best candidate of all those people I mentioned, and he's fucking terrible. So it's like, I've never seen such hilariously terrible candidates before. Who's going to vote for Hillary Clinton? Who wants to vote for Donald Trump? Do you imagine that your projects in life were not maximized and did not reach heights that were enough? I mean, I reached heights that were enough in my debate career. I won a lot, you know. We were one of the best programs in the country. But I guess what I would like to do is convey the gospel of Eric's correctness to everybody in ways that, instead of rejecting it and failing to benefit from my correctness, they embrace it and benefit from my correctness. When I was a debate coach, that's why all we did was win, because kids are trying, kids competing in debate, by and large, are trying to benefit from your correctness, from my correctness. And I'm correct about those kind of things. So obviously, the stronger argument wins, all things being equal otherwise. Accordingly, if we could just sort of keep pace in terms of techniques and stuff, we're going to win a majority of the time. However, adults are not willing to learn things, by and large. They do not want to be corrected and therefore correct. They want their wrongness to go unchallenged. I agree with you, Alec T. I agree with you that this gospel has a very low ceiling, because who wants to be scolded for their epistemological failures? Nobody. Mean Bird would vote for Trump. All right, I'll do a presidential poll. That's fine. Trump or Harris? Who should be president? Trump? Harris? There are two choices. Yes, I do understand in full that nobody wants to buy what I'm selling. I get that. Nevertheless, what am I going to do? Am I just going to be wrong? No, I'm not just going to be wrong. I'm just going to be immune to frustration when I make all this explanation and then it's just ignored entirely. The comment shows that, and nothing was understood at all. Very frustrating, especially when I provide a good explanation. Other things that I would like to be more successful at include music. I'd like to be president. I'd like to write a book of some kind. I'm not even sure what kind of book I'd like to write. The best book ever. Obama was worse than who? Than Trump? I mean, he was absolutely terrible too. His administration caused more harm because he's responsible for the ACA, and that's a fucking disaster. There's a mistaken belief somehow that insurance companies were paying for so-called free riders in the previous status quo, even though it was not insurance companies who were paying for that. Although there's an argument to be made that their prices went up because of the people who didn't pay. The prices went up for the people who did pay. Okay, fair enough, but the prices are going to go up way more if you mandate a bunch of unnecessary extra insurance. So, as I've indicated before, if one were to rewrite the ACA and go back in time and fix it, one would keep the individual mandate, let's imagine. One would have it mandate catastrophic health care coverage, which has a high deductible, low premium, and only kicks in when you suffer significant kind of health problem, so that you can pay for if you get whatever, but you won't pay anything out of pocket. I mean, you won't get covered for anything except for stuff that's catastrophic, right? So, like, if I need to go to the doctor because I break my arm, I have to pay for that out of pocket, because the total for putting that in a cast is going to be less than my high deductible. But then if I get into a serious accident and break a bunch of bones, blah, 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 I'm in the hospital and laid up in traction for months, then obviously at that point, I would exceed my deductible and the insurance company would pay the rest of it. So that's what they should have mandated. Instead, they did the exact wrong thing. If they wanted to do a mandate, which they shouldn't have because it's unconstitutional, obviously. But if they're going to get away with that for some reason and they want to do it, then at least mandate the right thing. You don't want to essentially legislate in a bunch of middlemen. It's crazy. And empower them to require people to get a high level of minimum insurance. That's the thing that makes it so crazy. Nobody needs all this preventative care bullshit or whatever. It doesn't save money in the long run. It's voodoo math. And the thing is, it's not like anybody's correctly or adequately disagreeing with me about any of this, right? I never hear anybody say, no, you're wrong about this, Eric, because of the following good reason. I never hear anybody say that. Why? Is it because nobody disagrees that the ACA was a terrible idea? No, plenty of people think the ACA was a great idea. The reason nobody disagrees with what I'm saying is because nobody can think of a good counter argument. Nobody's expecting doctors to work for free. Lighting fent? I don't know what lighting fent means, Interpanic. What I'm saying, look, in the United States, Beaufet, this is the bottom line. In the United States, Beaufet, if you go to a hospital in the emergency room, they can't make treatment contingent on whether you can pay. They have to treat you first and find out later, basically. So there was increasingly a problem of people only going to the emergency room because they didn't have any insurance and not being able to pay for it. So accordingly, there was concern about free riders, and hence the ACA was passed. But like I say, in terms of outcomes, the ACA is not necessarily bad conceptually, but it matters how something's executed, right? If you were to mandate the right thing, it's not a terrible idea, even though it's terribly unconstitutional. And I would never sign it into law, of course, because would never sign anything unconstitutional. But if you want to have that mandate, then you have to mandate the right thing to get the right kind of outcomes you want. Oh God. ACA tax credit plan. So in other words, they're going to give you tax credits if you get insurance instead of penalizing you if you don't, because the penalty was ruled unconstitutional by an appeals court, if I remember correctly. Okay, well, that's fine. Then you just want to incentivize people to get health care. Go ahead. If you want to make health insurance tax deductible, I'm fine with that. I don't think anything that lowers taxes in some way is a bad idea. Well, someone pays for them. Gee, it's not like nobody pays for the doctors. It's just that they either pay for them with their tax dollars or they pay for them out of pocket. It's always a better deal for everybody to pay for it out of pocket, because you're going to spend more in tax dollars than it would cost to just pay out of pocket. Obviously, with any kind of government spending, you get at least a 25% spoilage rate. Because it's this unnecessary extra rediversion of things, Okay, well, then they pay for them. Like I said, what you're saying is they have single payer. Okay, single payer healthcare is a system in which the government is the only person who can pay for healthcare, and everybody gets the same healthcare for free. Of course, you're always going to suffer from a certain disadvantage when you don't pay for something. You can't complain if it's not any good. So it's like when the government pays for it, even if my insurance pays for it, if my insurance pays for my doctor, well, then you get a situation like Rachel, where she was continually going to Mercy Medical Center for ongoing treatment she didn't need for a decade, rather than treating her bipolar mania properly with the correct combination of drugs. They just treated her as a cash cow, because that's the sort of shit you incentivize when you empower insurance companies. It's like, oh God. And people are just completely blind to this for some reason. It's very obvious that costs are going to rise the more you get middlemen involved, right? But here's the problem that America might face regarding politics, policy, etc. I'm here explaining exactly what ought to be policy-wise, and there are 8 people here. I'm giving the best political analysis of the ACA you'll hear anywhere, and there are 9 people here. There's not a market for being correct, whether it's about public policy or anything else. That's what may end up dooming the country, you know? Because here I am providing public policy matters that are correctly scrutinized and offering conclusions that are predicated on what's most defensible and therefore most correct, not on what I want to be or whatever. But I don't think the citizenry is especially, I mean, it's hard to get enthusiasm from a populace that's greater than the enthusiasm that is mustered by outrage politics. Because I'm not going to be inciting outrage. I'm going to be inciting mild annoyance in people. They're going to be mildly annoyed with me instead of outraged at the other guy. Well, I mean, I'm not saying doctors are bad people, but what about Rachel's story? Do you think she's just having to get with the one chick in the country who's being treated as a cash cow? I don't think so. And that will always happen when there's a disconnect between what people pay and what they get. So if a person pays for all of their procedures out of pocket, the doctor's only going to do what's actually necessary because, after all, there's a person paying. Just like when I go to the doctor and pay cash, or the pharmacy and pay cash, and I mean, without any insurance, you know, I get a special price. But this is what we charge people without insurance because we just need to make a reasonable amount of profit off of it. And here's what we charge the insurance company. Why is it like that? Why do you suppose it's like that? Because, of course, no matter who you are, if you're dealing with a customer who's spending their own money, you've got to worry about how much you charge them. If you're dealing with a customer who's spending the insurance company's money, you only have to worry about what the co-payment is. If there is one, right? Mrs. Gramerson gets mad when her co-payment is over $10 for this drug. Okay, Mrs. Gramerson, but you don't get mad that the insurance company is being charged $400. Ultimately, that goes back to our premiums, etc. So we are funding an industry of middlemen making more profit than anybody else in the industry. What do you think about that? I mean, the pharmaceutical companies are making a lot of money too, because of course they can charge outrageous prices when people are getting the drugs with the insurance. I only get annoyed at people who talk a lot but don't make anything happen. Well, here, Lamb, I'm talking a lot because what I'm trying to make happen is the primacy of these narratives. I've noticed something interesting. I don't know if it has anything to do with me or not, but when I first started negating evolution, I got a lot more pushback than I do nowadays. Nowadays, I think people are a little less certain about it, maybe. Yeah, talking is something happening. I'm making things happen on the flow, on the argumentational flow. I'm explaining things. Here, Lamb, you know how much I like to explain things. Is this an issue of corruption with Big Pharma and the insurance companies? Um, I don't I don't think it's expressly corruption. I suspect that I think it's more likely that the insurance companies are I don't know. I don't think I don't know whether it's corruption, collusion, same, it would be the same thing in that instance, collusion, or whether it's just the inevitable negotiating practices of a insurance company that's going to cover certain drugs and not certain drugs, etc., and that has some costs to profit ratio that they sustain, and I don't really know. I'm not sure. And as far as, do big bankers fall in the same category? Um, well, the thing is, I'm not sure why anybody ever thought that it was so important that banks be saved when everybody's deposits are insured up to a certain amount by the FDIC, right? So even if the bank fails, people's deposits are insured up to meow amount. Granted, last I remember, this was a long time ago. I thought about it. It was $250,000, but I'm sure it's more now. I had no insurance, and they tried to charge me like $50 for Tums. The doc prescribed it, so I was like quadruple the shelf price. So I was like, no, I'm bought off the shelf. I think it's still 250K. Okay. Well, I acknowledge that that's not a huge amount, but then why wouldn't Congress bail out all the depositors rather than the bank itself? Right? Why, if you're gonna have to bail out somebody, bail out the depositors, creditors, etc., not the bank itself. But I believe the banks paid that back ultimately. Just like I believe the car industry paid it back. So I'm not sure though. I know the car industry did. I'm not sure about the banks. They're constantly getting bailed out and are rarely jailed for causing massive harms. Well, like why wasn't the main guy at eBay jailed for that harassment of that couple? I guess he had, you know, plausible deniability. Obama inherited the '07 financial crisis, and then after his presidency, he's giving talks at Goldman Sachs. What's he giving talks about? Hi, my name is Barack Obama. I'm here to talk to you today about penguins. Those lovable little birds from Antarctica. Aren't they wonderful? Let's talk some more about them. That seems like an odd thing for Obama to talk about. Dead boy Klaus, I got to tell you, I have officially given up on the Oakland A's making the playoffs. I waited till I think probably well after they were mathematically eliminated to give up on it. But I believe in the power of faith. I'd also like to mention what's up with the 49ers? 1-2? Really? They lost to the Lambs? Also, likelihood of a Dodgers Yankees World Series. Greater or less than 50%. Well, look, of the 5 people that voted on this poll, Trump is ahead 80 to 20%. Yeah. No, I don't watch rugby. Rugby's for Australians. Although I guess, the U.S. did pretty well in rugby at the Olympics, women's rugby anyway. I'm not sure about the men's rugby. Rugby just seems like boring football, right? Because there's not plays. There aren't any plays. They just kind of run down the field together in a big group and stuff. 49ers might be having the year from hell. A lot of injuries. Many teams don't bounce back after losing the Super Bowl. Not looking great. McCaffrey flew to Germany for some Kobe Bryant steroids for his calf. Kobe Bryant steroids? Is that a special brand of steroids that they market in Germany? Sebastian Chabel. What happened to the views he was getting before? YouTube was weird. They punish him. They changed the system. They changed the algorithm periodically. Or continually. Probably they're updating it a little bit by little bit. But accordingly, this is not a time period when the algorithm is favoring my live streams, but it's also the case that it's just it's not so much that the algorithm isn't favoring my live streams as it is my live streams aren't being the sort of thing the algorithm ought to favor. Most people aren't that interested in hearing somebody explain a bunch of political policy in a dispassionate way. If they want to watch politics at all, they want to watch somebody explaining how those darn meows are so darn meow. It's like when Mr. Burns, I think it was Mr. Burns ran for president or something, gave a speech in which he said, I could try it again and see. I'm really hoping for a Dodgers-Yankees World Series. That way, no matter who wins, either Rachel or I win. Because our second teams, respectively, are the Dodgers and the Yankees. She's not sitting right here, but pretend she is. So that would be nice. Also, I want to see Shohei in the playoffs for as long as possible. I find watching Shohei Ohtani exciting because, especially like lately, he's gotten a little bit hotter, right? Like he actually has a low average with runners in scoring position. Did you know that? It's true. I'll have to try the old man title again. But the thing is, back when I was getting a lot of views, it was when I'd pop up on the shorts feed periodically. However, and then usually it's like this, and I'm not on the shorts feed, and I get a very small number of views. However, I think it was the last time I live streamed, I actually got decent numbers, ended up with over 1,000 views. But back when the algorithm was pushing vertical live streaming, I would get like 10,000 views. Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm excited to see him in the playoffs. And we'll see, right? We'll see. Because it is the case that he had a low average with runners in scoring position. And that's kind of the most important place to hit, right? You know, it's great to hit when there's nobody on base, but if you're hitting 218 with runners in scoring position, you're not really coming through that often in the clutch. You know, one out of every 5 times instead of say 1 out of 3, which would be ideal. Turds and people and turds. Which do you prefer? Hi, show media. I'm sorry I didn't say hi yet. I have been busy addressing things. I've been explaining, I've been complaining, what rhymes with those things? I've been hydroplaning. 100 million views. Mike Trout is the best example. He's been the best statistical player for the last 10 years. I don't think he's won a single playoff series. But it's not so much about Trout as it is about the Angels, you know? The Angels organizationally are a mess. And they had Ohtani and they had Trout together, but they couldn't even put together a pitching staff, right? So I kind of just say, even Ohtani is not going to help a team that can't pitch win enough games to make the playoffs. The Angels never seem to understand. They need to build around pitching. You can't build around hitting. The A's are trying to do that. It's worked out pretty well, actually, for the last half of the season. I think we'll have a winning record for the second half of the season, probably from July 1st to the end of the year, even though we've lost a couple of games recently. 2 generational talents and they couldn't make it to October. It's also structural to baseball. Well, I mean, granted, the richer teams have a big advantage. There's no disputing that. But seems like every year there's one of the smaller teams that also makes it into the playoffs. What's my favorite sport? I would say it's college football. College football is my favorite sport. I live and die with the USC football team when we're good. When we, like last year, which we just sucked so much ass that I just stopped caring at some point. It's like, whatever, the season's already over. This year, we still have a legit chance to make the playoffs. We should be favored, probably win most of the rest of the games we're in. The one that would seem to be most challenging coming up is Notre Dame. But we kind of got a pretty breezy trip through the Big Ten. But maybe my favorite sporting event is March Madness. I think March Madness is super fun. Who doesn't love March Madness? The Cinderellas, the buzzer beaters, oh my God! It's wonderful. Caleb Williams is getting a test of how tough the NFL is. His O-line sucks and his coach seems to be terrible. Well, I've benched him on my fantasy teams, and I've got Dak Prescott as a quarterback of one of them. The other one, he wasn't the starter in the first place. I have Patrick Mahomes as the starter in the other one. Rachel, I think, also has Patrick Mahomes. Your wife hates college sports? I like college sports better. I don't know why. I was interested to see that the Pac-12, it looks like the Mountain West is going to be the conference that dies. And the Pac-12 will have successfully poached away. They've already successfully poached away so many teams that the Mountain West no longer has 8 teams, which is the minimum. Meanwhile, the Pac-12 just needs to get one more, and they'll have 8, which is the minimum, as I said. So, launching pad for the big leagues? Yeah, I guess, but college sports are more than just minor leagues for the pros. For example, baseball and basketball have minor leagues already, and the NFL has spring and summer football, whatever that's called, like XFL or yeah, something about the emotion and camaraderie of college, I understand. Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame and the coach crying. You never get that in pro sports. True. I mean, occasionally you get a big upset in pro sports, but even then, like, it's not that big of an upset. It's not really much of an upset at all, if at all, for like a bad baseball team to take one game of a series. If you have a 7-game series between 2 given professional basketball teams, the best and the worst, usually it won't go 4-0, right? Probably. Certainly wouldn't go 7-0 if you had all 7 games. Well, I know I do like soccer a lot. But I only like international soccer, like World Cup soccer and Olympic soccer. But I don't like MLS because it's just, I don't know. It's just whatever. I do like hockey. I'm gonna begin another equivalent to my recently completed Oakland A's season, because this year I'm determined to be a legit ongoing San Jose Sharks fan. Now, last year the Sharks were not very good, but at the beginning of the season, and I believe it's still the preseason, last night was the preseason. So I'm assuming that wasn't the last game of the preseason. Well, Dat Boy Klaus, maybe you should experiment with the special kind of joy that one feels for liking a bad team. Yeah, I know. They were the hockey equivalent of the Oakland Athletics last year. I mean, and you do get like instances where the White Sox, I think, lost 21 straight games this year. So I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think what today is today, the 25th? Yeah. I think there's at least a couple more. Yeah, that kind of hockey, ice hockey. That boy Klaus is a Jets fan, and he's very experienced in rooting for bad teams. It's crazy what a difference an experienced quarterback makes, huh? I mean, they were not a terrible team last year. They just, I guess, didn't really score enough points. But you get Aaron Rodgers. Did I call him Brett Favre for a second? I think I might have accidentally called him Brett Favre. Anyway, Aaron Rodgers, he's made a big difference in the New York Jets. To which I have to say, Jets, Jets, or whatever that is. Is it Jets, Jets? Is that how it goes? I'm looking forward to going to an A's game next year in Sacramento. Gee, I don't think there's any sport that's quite as violent as football, including boxing and MMA. The thing is, you have to pussyfoot a lot more if you don't have the protective gear on, right? If you have all this protective gear on, you can go more all out. That just naturally, yeah. Last year we had the worst quarterback in the league, but an elite defense. Now our defense took a step back, but we took a huge step at quarterback forward. It was surreal to see a Jets quarterback complete routine third downs. You know what the Jets maybe will be most famous for in all of history? Broadway Joe, but then second, the butt fumble. It's true. Those are the things the Jets are most famous for. I'd say most famous is for the butt fumble. Mark Sanchez and the butt fumble. I'm sorry, but that's what the Jets are most famous for. that highlight gets replayed so often. Everybody in the world is familiar with the butt fumble. Yes, Taylor Swift's boyfriend plays football. He plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a tight end, and his name is Travis Kelce. Benny and the. Okay, fine. That's true too, Winston's mom. I don't have any war dance. You know, it's like I'm so driven by my emotions. This is what it means to have polar. Is your polar function kind of has a lot to do with things, with how you go about things, because you're avoiding this thing and or not conscious of how it's influencing you in a variety of ways or something. Man. Right, he's kind of the Bill Buckner of professional football in that regard. Uh, so what was I saying before I got distracted by Mark Sanchez? Yeah, I know I remember him as a USC quarterback more than as a Jets quarterback. Maybe that's why I associate the team with the butt fumble rather than Mark Sanchez. I mean, I do associate him with it as well. I was talking about polar. Thank you, Winston's mom. So it's like, what did I do this morning after reading those comments by Coneman? I was mad, and I wanted to complain about it. So I didn't even think to myself, I'm mad, I want to complain. I just said, I need to live stream. And then I started it and I started talking about it, right? So in that regard, my polar is instigating my eighth slot function into taking the action of actually starting a live stream. From that point forward, once I've taken that action to start it, then it's just basically extroverted intuition and TI or extroverted intuition and, you know, FE if I'm like, say, just making jokes rather than explaining things. Or if I'm being like, yeah, boy Klaus, it's so great to see you. Oh my God, I am amazed. Then I'm using some extroverted feeling. It is nice to see you, by the way, that boy Klaus. Even though my just using that demonstration was just for demonstration purposes, it's nevertheless true that it is nice to see you. Chabal. I don't want to Google Sebastian Chabal. Fine, I'll Google it. Sebastian Chabal, you are a fabble. What? He's a rugby player. Obviously, I don't care about rugby. Nobody cares about rugby. Not even rugby players care about rugby. That's how few people care about rugby. No, not Rugrats, rugby. I think rugby would be a good first name for a girl. Don't you think so? Rugby puddings. I'm Rugby Puddings. How do you do? I'm fine, Rugby Puddings. How are you? I'm fine. Thanks for asking. You're welcome, Rugby Puddings. I don't even remember their names, show media. Let alone, I don't know. I'd be that one girl who was a super bitch. She's a potting star. She's a potting star. Who's a potting star? Who's a potting star? Oh, I know who you're talking about. You're talking about Rugby Puddings. Yeah, I did get. No, not rub me. No, not rub me puddings. Rub me matey is the name of a gay pirate porn movie. Rub me matey, and walk. I need you to walk me plank. It's a gay porno featuring the pirate from SpongeBob. Well, shiver me timbers. Yeah, I'm shivering your timbers so well right now. Yarr. Captain, what's he doing? He's walking me blank. Oh my God, I'm such a landlubber. Indeed ye are, matey. Ye be loving my land. What do pirates put on their fish? Vinegar. Padded shoulder, 80s women tops. Hi, Jonathan Earl. How's it going? Did I not say hi to you yet? I probably did, but maybe I didn't. Hello, how are you? Won't you tell me your name? It's Jonathan Earl? I should have guessed that. Well, I should have guessed that from the outset. I don't like the Doors. And I think you also should not like the Doors. I also don't like the Moody Blues. And I think that you also should not like the Moody Blues. And that if you do, you're wrong. Also, The Who. Yes, they might have one or two good songs, maybe. But again, if you like The Who, you are wrong. Why? Because you should not like The Who because they're bad. Grateful Dead, bad. Not a good band. Not good at all. Somewhere between awful and terrible. Well, looks like Trump wins 54-45. But around here, I think the vote might skew a little Republican. Seems like, maybe. I'm not sure. Grateful Dead heads like to dance while waving grilled cheese sandwiches in the air. I wonder if that's true. This skews a little Republican here. I'm not, I mean, obviously not terribly 54, 45 or whatever it said. But it's just, I would guess that because, like, well, I guess because, like, one of the most appalling things I've heard in a long time is the idea that it's somehow a plan or a good plan or a good idea or anything remotely resembling any of those things to double tax revenue for the federal government. I agree with you, Jonathan Earl. I was just thinking I was thinking about the extent to which the poll would reflect the general populace, And I was saying it might skew a little Republican around here. So I'm really opposed to reckless taxation, expansion of federal government, and so forth. But I don't know if that is enough to skew the audience Republican. Because I'm also typically in favor of a lot of environmental regulation, but not carbon emission stuff. For reasons I've already explained. It's like, that's one of those things, you need to find a better solution to it, right? We can sequester carbon out of the atmosphere rather than creating this artificial market of carbon credits that it's just stupidity. Is that close to what Pauline is saying right now? What do you know? I haven't looked into it much. Alright, I'm getting this and that. That's fine. I'll get these two things. That's good. Oh man. This stuff is sticky. Sticky icky. Hi, Comedy Flu. You're a libtard. Well, I don't think you're a liberal. I don't think liberals are retarded. It's like, I'm not interested in, like, the people, right? I would love it if what was correct were to be exactly 50-50 with the Democrats and Republicans. But all I can do is be correct. I'm not sure how people are going to perceive my splay of issues. Yeah, I mean, why are we trying to limit carbon emissions? Carbon is not inherently a pollutant. It may have that impact on climate change that people say it has, but that doesn't mean that we should address the problem by trying to put less carbon in the atmosphere. It could very well mean that we need to address the problem by taking more carbon out of the atmosphere. It could additionally mean that this is not a problem we're going to be able to mitigate. It's a problem we have to adapt to. So in that case, we need to direct our resources and so forth, towards life in a more weather volatile world, etc., all the different meads of climate change. We're never going to put out anything more than massive amounts of carbon when our population on the world is like the last 20 years of population or something, 40 years maybe, is equivalent to all of human history before that. Like one of those kind of things. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but obviously warming started with human agriculture way back when. But it was slow-ish accordingly because humans only occupied so much of the world's space, etc. The thing to note is that it was anthropogenic even thousands of years ago. So that means, accordingly, the idea that we're going to somehow, by limiting how much carbon people put out, we're going to address this problem is insane. There's billions of people on the planet. All of whom breathe out the thing you're trying to reduce the emissions of. So, obviously, our efforts should be directed in places that make sense. You don't want environmental theater, and that's what we've got with carbon caps. Do things that actually matter. When you do, environmental law comes out great. California's crackdown on air pollution changed everything in Los Angeles. From a childhood in which we had multiple stages of smog alert, in which the smog was insane, to my adulthood in which LA had really quite good air quality almost always. And even when it was bad, it would never got to even the small bad from a long time ago. It would never even get to like a first stage smog alert, right? It would just be a smoggier or less smoggy day, but by and large, not very smoggy. Los Angeles used to be famous for being so smoggy. But now, thanks to catalytic converters and all that, we've got much better air quality. So, I'm for conservation, various other things. I'm not for stupid bullshit that would just be a system that's gamed, like carbon credits. It's going to be like the carpooling. People aren't incentivized by that to do the thing. They're incentivized to take advantage of the incentive when they do the thing. I don't think it's the case that the earth doesn't waste anything, whatever that means. I don't think that really means anything. There's more carbon in the atmosphere now than when the dinosaurs were on the planet. I don't disagree with you. And it's going to be shit tons more. And it's going to just be on balance increasing no matter what we try to do. Because people being productive produces carbon. So, look, I'm not saying we shouldn't do anything to address climate change. I'm saying we should do something that's actually going to make a difference. Like, figure out how to solve the problem rather than hope to slow it down a little bit by making appeals to people's whatever when, it's like you've got various factories producing various kinds of emissions in various parts of the world who are not interested at all, obviously, in shutting down operations and making structural changes to their factory such that it can do what it does with less carbon production or capturing before it gets out in the atmosphere, which can be complicated and expensive, etc. So, there's not any way to change the reality that people are responsive to their financial situation. Those kind of concerns are much more pressing in an individual's life than environmental concerns. Like all the people who are advocating for all this carbon reduction, it's because they don't understand how their job directly relates to production of carbon or how their livelihood depends on it or whatever. They just don't understand. Is this one ready? How about this one? This ready? This stuff takes such a long time to dry. Well, I mean, the problem with hydrogen is it was kind of competing with electric. They're only going to make infrastructure for one of those things. Okay, Kitty, you don't need me to fucking watch you eat. Fucking cat. So, it's basically a matter of, being smart and practical. Not pretending that it doesn't matter how much stuff costs. How do you use carbon for farming? Good for you, Gelt. Good for you. I wish you all the best in your studies. Well, that's not necessarily true. There are many places in Africa where they're taking what was formerly like refuse, you mean? Rubbish? Just lying around all over the place and turning into useful things like indestructible bricks for making housing and roads. The goal of carbon farming is to create a net loss of carbon from the atmosphere. Gelt turned 21 recently. You've been enjoying that, huh? Well, careful with that alcohol, It's a hell of a drug, as Rick James once said. If I were a scientist going through preliminary education and was told over and over again the data support these assertions, how would I be able to counter that? It would depend. I mean, you'd look at the data and see if it actually supports their conclusions. You deliberate about it. Like, you could show me any case made by anybody, and I could tell you where and how it fell short of what it needs to do, or etc. But sometimes it doesn't fall short. I don't think the data on climate change is inconclusive or anything. I think there's no doubt that we're experiencing climate change, and that it's anthropogenic as well. Um, but there seems to be a skipping of the question of whether or not that means we should try to produce less carbon. Yeah, I can't go overboard because I'm on metformin. I can only drink 2 to 3 drinks a day without risking lactic acidosis. Well, that's good. I'm on Wellbutrin right now. I've been prescribed Wellbutrin. I'm not sure what to think about it, really. I'm not diabetic, but it's to prevent metabolic disease and weight gain from the 2 antipsychotics, mostly olanzapine. Rachel's on olanzapine too. What else are you on besides olanzapine? It works for Rachel too, in conjunction with um, Prozac and clonazepam. 150 or 300? 150 or 300 what? Oh, Wellbutrins? I haven't even looked at the bottle. $150. I didn't know they come in 150 or 300. When you boosted up to 300, you started having problems? No, it says Abilify, lithium, olanzapine, Wellbutrin, and propranolol. I've never heard of propranolol. Double check their data. Make sure you do your own research and don't cherry pick things that reinforce your currently held beliefs. You should get rid of those things. My guy, you've been at this for a minute. At what? This particular live stream, or live streaming in general, or YouTube in general? I've been at YouTube for a good 10 years. I've been at live streaming since they started live streaming on YouTube. Propranolol is a beta blocker blood pressure med, but it can help physical anxiety symptoms. Interesting. Well, I don't know really what to think about this Wellbutrin. I do think that it makes me... It's hard to say exactly what it's doing because I'm also taking Adderall with it. It does seem to make me a little bit less... What did? Wellbutrin? It doesn't make me irritable. It makes me flat. Adderall makes me a little irritable. update 2. Update 2. I was talk this specific live stream. Thanks for the update to go Lower Lodge by the way. Okay, well, I'm not exactly sure what that means. I do understand that I'm supposed to put a 2 after update. Update to go Lower Lodge by the way. What's Lower Lodge mean? Will butyrol increase your cannabis tolerance? That doesn't seem to have much to do with my cannabis tolerance. What was off? You're the Mark V, Jonathan Earl. I'm glad to hear it. Mania. Lower Lodge is the channel that gave you a shout out with your info on the 1980s. Oh, thanks, Fool's Errand. I did notice that I got a few recent comments to that video. I don't super often check my comments exactly. And when I do, I just kind of heart them to. But thank you. I appreciate somebody being interested in it. I was super stoked when that happened because that guy reached out to me to tell his story, help him tell a story, you know. And it's because I had made a video before about how this person in this Reddit thread was making some reckless claim about something that I disproved by finding the source that the person had been, the person didn't know was their source, but that was in fact, there was a source for this thing that somebody was saying. Anyway, I think I was being fairly, I was definitely being correct about it. But that person was being wrong about it for some reason, despite my being correct about it. So I had to make a video because obviously when somebody is wrong and it annoys me, I have to make a video. You're my newest sub. Cool, thanks. I've been running a sub deficit the last month or two, running about minus 20 subs a month. That's the Gorilla Glue. Gorilla Glue is really, it's just insanely sticky. And it's what the youths might refer to as dank. Dank AF. If you're a young person, perhaps you're familiar with the term dank AF. As an old person, I've only encountered it in passing, hearing the young people talk. There's a Gorilla Glue number 4. Lower Lodge stated we won't correct themselves yet, but gave a link to your channel as to give you more views and will correct themselves later. Being good content creator. Okay, thanks. I don't even know. It was a long time ago that I did that. It was a year ago, right? So I kind of forgot the deets, some of them maybe. I make a lot of videos in a given year. And you know, it's like I always feel like I want to start making some different kinds of videos, but I don't end up doing it. Like I'd like to make some internet analysis videos where I talk about different things and, you know, internet dramas and or channels or whatever, stuff I like to watch, stuff I think is terrible, you know. Because I watch a lot of content these days on YouTube. I never used to watch YouTube. I just made content for it. I basically never watched it. But nowadays I watch a lot of. Okay, so don't worry. I will stay off of your channel. All right, let me go get the mail. Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Don't worry. Everybody stop panicking. For the love of God, won't you please stop panicking? Well, that's my problem too, Fool's Errand, is I tend to just wanna, it's fun to just live stream, right? I like to live stream. It messed with your memory a bit, but boosted your happy chemicals. Oh. Well, I would say what Wellbutrin does, if I'm to explicitly note a change that I can articulate that's quantifiable, it's the amount of negative self-talk I engage in seems to go down when I'm on the stuff. But that could link to the Adderall some too. I agree, my memory's a little bit hazy sometimes on this stuff, seems like. I actually seem to have a pretty healthy relationship with my emotions on the stuff. Like, I talked about something that with Rachel yesterday, or I think it was the day before, and it was something like a bad memory from a long time ago. Something that has bothered me for, you know, whenever I'm whenever I'm engaging in negative self-talk, I remember instances from my past where I failed in one of a number of possible ways, and then just say I hate myself, or like I wish I were dead or something, you know. I tend to say those things. So obviously that's not very healthy. And when the negative self-talk got kind of rampant, I just one day decided to take one of Rachel's Prozac, see if it helped. It did help a little bit, it seemed like. I mean, I do think the Prozac helps in a different way than this Wellbutrin does, though. It's like with the Wellbutrin, it seems that the quantity is greatly diminished, dramatically, almost down to very little of it, just a couple times a day, maybe. And with the Prozac, it seems as though it just it didn't necessarily diminish the frequency of it quite so much, but I could just kind of note it and let it pass by me without having any emotional impact. But when I was talking about this story from a long time ago on the Wellbutrin, it felt like, oh, I'm able to talk about this because it's not that super unbearably painful, but also I'm capable of crying about it when I'm telling her, you know. And it's just a story of me bullying somebody from when I was a little kid, just to clarify what it's all about. And I kind of felt like, oh, I see it. It allows me to cope with my emotions more in a healthy fashion because they're proportional to the thing rather than not proportional to the thing. You still vape a lot on Wellbutrin? I like Wellbutrin due to the dopamine. My dopamine broke because my antipsychotics jam up my dopamine receptors. The thing is, when with Wellbutrin and Adderall, it's like you don't get as high on the Adderall really. So, or you kind of are, but you're just less gacked out. I don't know how else to explain it. It's kind of like, it makes Adderall less fun, but then accordingly, it makes it last longer. Hopefully, we'll see how it goes. If I were to take the Wellbutrin and let it kick in for a while before taking any of the Adderall, I'd probably just be fine with just one Adderall. I am not allergic to any medication. The military gave me Wellbutrin and I broke out horribly in hives. So they ran tests and said, nope, you're not allergic, but your body hates this combination. Well, I mean, people respond really differently to different drugs. Like Prozac makes me feel kind of like horny. I don't get the sense that that's usually the response to it. Whereas this stuff kills my sex drive, Wellbutrin. Not completely, but it reduces it. I wish I could get Addy, but my history of psychosis and prescription stem abuse makes it to where no psychiatrist will ever want to prescribe it to me. Well, I don't know. I have a history of stimulant abuse, but my doctor gives it to me. In fact, he even gave me twice as much when I said I'm abusing this, basically, without really expecting him to give me more. I'm just like, well, this is the reality of it. I just tell him the truth, you know. He tried to self-delete with an overdose of Prozac 210 milligrams. Lucky for my dumbass, Prozac is not lethal. I did land in the loony bin for a few hours. Wow. That's crazy. No, I actually humped on it like 2 days ago or whatever. I've heard of Paxil, but I've never done it. I don't know what it is. Right. Well, it's not. The thing is, Wellbutrin, it doesn't exactly, it doesn't create dysfunction. It's just, I just don't feel like initiating it. Once, once I do, then it's fine. And it's fine, but I don't know. Maybe it makes me enjoy it a little bit less too. I have done Viagra before, and I don't like the blue shift that it does with your vision. And this is why you don't do drugs, kids. I stay away from as much pharma as I can. Well, the thing is, fool's errand, I never thought I would ever take an antidepressant, right? I assumed that my mental health was fine. I liked to take Adderall, amphetamines, because I liked the way I'd get super focused on something or whatever. But then that started to change after a bunch of big life changes. My parents died. We moved up here, and then I just started to notice after a long time, really, because I'm a little slow on the uptake with subjectivities, that I was really engaging in a lot of the same kind of negative self-talk that I used to engage in when I was an alcoholic. So I wasn't really sure why, but like I said, not very long ago, just like a month ago or something. Not even that, probably. I, on a whim one day, took one of Rachel's Prozacs to see if I just to feel better or something. I don't know. And I thought, oh, you know what? That does seem to help. So then I told this psychiatrist about it. Rachel and I have the same psychiatrist. And he prescribed me Wellbutrin. This is the first month in my entire life, I'm 53 years old, that I'm on antidepressants. Is self-talk intrusive thoughts, or are you actually intentionally thinking about it? No, it's intrusive thoughts. Some associative trigger of the memory will trigger the memory, because that's SI conscious, This other thing is similar to this SI memory. I don't think about what this thing is. I think about how it links to this personal experience of mine. This is kind of the nature of SI. Just like a week or two, not long. Like, I guess I got it on like the 17th, probably. Oh yeah, I didn't think you were judging fools, Aaron. I just wanted to explain what was going on, you know. So, so I'm kind of trying to find the right balance of things here, I guess. It seems that by and large, Wellbutrin makes me less fiendy. You just have to come to the realization that feelings are not real. I know that seems weird. They seem so real, but they're really not once you realize they have no power over you. They do have power over me. I'm not a cool as a cucumber Japanese and Buddhist who responds with, you know, the same perfected calm in all circumstances. I am very much subject to my emotions. They don't influence me in terms of my argumentation, but they might impact in terms of when I make the arguments or whether I make them. Like today, I wasn't planning to start streaming about objectivity and subjectivity again, but I was so annoyed by Cone Man's comments that I could not help but do so. Let me see this. I gotta see this. Hold on a second, everybody. I'll be right back. Sorry, everybody. Sorry. I'm quite the definition of internalizing emotions causing a negative reaction. Well, I don't internalize my emotions very much. I respond as I feel in the moment. So when I started this stream this morning, I was annoyed. Show media, rewind and listen to the beginning if you want. I'm not talking about that anymore. I'm hours away from talking about that. In a nutshell, he didn't understand my argument about objectivity and subjectivity, and said some nonsense that, you know, he said like, well, but it's still open for debate whether it's objective or subjective. Morality is objective or subjective. And I said, come man, you're not. The whole video is about the fact that it's a category error to say that morality is either objective or subjective, because we have to mean something specific when we mean objective and subjective. The whole video was about that. And it's like saying, it's like he was saying the first question, is morality objective? And I was saying, but imagine he was saying, is this dog a Great Dane or is this dog a Chihuahua? And I was pointing out it's a cow. And then he was saying, but whether it's a Great Dane or a Chihuahua is still open for debate, right? No, because those things are examples of dogs. And Cow is a different category of thing. But it's like I'm just talking in a powerful gale. He hears nothing out of my mouth and understands it as I expect it to be understood. This is what drives me so crazy about it. I had a really bad reaction to coding. I had hallucinations, but once they got so absurd, I knew they were just hallucinations. The problem with that is sometimes I wait a little too long to make sure that something is real. Huh. Well, what does what saying mean? What does what even mean? Are you reacting to some of my comments? I don't know. You're not Cone Man, fool's errand. It's fine, show media. It's nothing. Cone Man didn't do anything wrong. He just is wrong. And I cannot communicate with him to explain to him how to be right. Because obviously, if you're TI polar, you can't make any headway with TI talking to such a person, just as you're not going to make a lot of headway talking to me using FI. So, for example, if you're trying to harm prevent or telling me what to do, I'm just going to be mad at you for telling me what to do. I'm not going to be influenced at all to harm prevent. If anything, I'll be influenced towards the opposite. Equivalently, trying to I can't get TI through to somebody who's TI polar by doing better TI. It's just I'm doomed to fail. No, show media, don't say that about him. Don't say that. He's not that. He too, I think, is trying to understand. He just doesn't understand what I'm saying. Because he's not trying to understand things through a definitional frame. And accordingly, he's not going to succeed at it. Obviously, you're not going to succeed at something where you don't try to do it. It's like, even though I can't explain to them maybe about objectivity or subjectivity or whatever, I still want to explain to them why we're talking past each other. But even that, I can't explain without TIing more. I could say to him, you value authenticity and I value an external standard, but he'd probably disagree with me. Because he thinks he's an INFJ, and if he understands that FI links to authenticity, then he's going to say, no, I don't. I'm not using a frame of authenticity as a tool function. We go more with the argument, morals change per situation, and that 100% conclusions are wrong. Well, no, fool's errand. That's not correct, because obviously things that comprise crimes against other people, things like rape and mayhem, which is chopping off people's arms and stuff, definitionally, they preclude any understanding of it where it might be okay to do that, because if it's okay to do that, the first one, it's just sex, right? So you could argue the latter, the R word is always immoral, and it would be hard to argue otherwise, because we have an understanding of what the moral version of that looks like. And the difference is the consent or willingness of the person, of the two people participating, right? So in that case, you could say 100% of the time it's bad. Just like child abuse is 100% of the time bad because abuse means it's not ever acceptable, right? That's the definition of abuse. Regardless, my point is that people may disagree about whether a given thing is morally acceptable or not. They might disagree about whether a given thing is morally required or not. They might disagree about whether a given thing is morally impermissible or not. But what they should not disagree about is that those are the three possible statuses of morality that morality affords us to work with. Either things are morally impermissible and we cannot do them, things are morally permissible and we can, or things are morally required and we must. What's the consequence if we don't obey? We get the status of immoral. That's it. That's the consequence. So the thing is, what does universalize, which means what kind of thing can we say is a universal obligation that everybody must do, and that is not violate the rights of others. They have a duty of non-interference. For example, since I own my body, you can't stab me and be without my consent and be morally in the right, because you will have violated my bodily integrity rights. We can make that kind of reasoning, and it's the best way to reason regarding how we should understand morality for the purposes of codifying it into law. We may have some prescriptive stuff that we have to include in our laws, but by and large, we want them to reflect what universalizes. The law should not be about balancing between competing interests. There's a big mistake among some judges who think that's the case. Instead, the law should be about interpreting whether a given law is constitutional, for example, or interpreting whether a given indictment or prosecution is in keeping with the definition of the crime that they're being prosecuted for, etc. Two unaliving happened, one through accident and one of rage, but both ending the same outcome. No, because intentionality is required for wickedness. So that's why we have a distinction between civil and criminal liability as well in terms of the law. Civil liability is for things that you don't mean to do on purpose. They're just accidents. Criminal liability is for things that you intend to do. And this is why, in fact, traffic infractions are infractions, not crimes. It's because the government doesn't want to have to prove intent every time they give someone a ticket. You can be speeding by accident and still be responsible to pay a ticket because a ticket is not a crime. You're not being accused of a crime. To be accused of a crime and successfully make their case, the government would need to establish your intent. All anybody would have to do is say, I didn't know, or it happened by accident, I wasn't paying attention, and they'd be not guilty. No, it's not situational. I mean, yes, we distinguish between different kinds of situations to make moral calculi about them. In other words, I'm going to calculate this situation, is it moral or immoral? That situation, is it immoral or immoral? But the thing is, the reasoning I'm going to use is the same. I'm going to apply the same test to every situation that I might want to evaluate. So yes, obviously, morality is in fact the art and science of making moral distinctions between things that are acceptable and not. The fact that intentionality is the key component in whether something's criminal or civil liability, whether someone has moral culpability or just financial culpability, is one of the distinctions that is made by moral reasoning. So, yeah. But for example, in every instance where somebody breaks into somebody's house and shoots them with a gun, it's at least felony murder, right? Because you know that if you kill someone in the commission of a crime, even if it's an accident, you get charged with felony murder. So we define our crimes carefully in order to avoid injustice. Use of force isn't wicked if it's in self-defense, as long as it's proportional. But yeah, moral reasoning makes a lot of little distinctions like that, and it's rather a cumbersome framework to have to reference if you're not like a debate coach like me who's argued these things a million times, so knows all the specs of them, you know? Obviously, people don't use that moral framework as the way to make moral decisions in their life, usually, if ever. But the thing is, that's where we distinguish between the realms of public and private. So it's fine for you to have your own moral reasoning, provided you don't break any of these laws that violate, provided you don't violate anybody's rights. It doesn't matter why you don't violate their rights, right? But it does matter what we agree it can be defended argumentationally, because that's the framework from which we base law. So we want that to be correct because it applies to everybody, so it needs to be fair and right and defensible. Most of all, hi Chess My Ass. I deal with veterans and a lot of survivor's guilt. I see. And the thing is, soldiers who are fighting in armed conflict, that's generally considered one of those instances where you're not morally culpable for, fighting against other soldiers. Certainly, no one's ever morally culpable for surviving. Chess My Ass. Oh, you're a mandate with a new name. Cool. Sounds good. So what am I doing today? I got a text from Delilah with an update on the arrival of funds from our divestiture, which has been slow in the making here. I've been basically in a holding pattern, not wanting to spend any money since the beginning of the month, basically. But I paid my phone bill yesterday. Figured I better pay that because it was 4 days past due, and if it was 5 days past due, I get a late fee the next month. Ask me for an update. I'm excited for a new formula. All right, give me an update. Tell me about your new formula. Is it Formula 409? Hi, Rachel. How's it going, darling? If so, Chess My Ass, that already exists. Do you have moon in the last 7-8 degrees in air signs? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know where my moon is. Rachel, do you know where my moon is? My moon is contained within my ass cheeks. Rachel probably knows. Rachel probably knows where my moon is. I like to get, when I go to Denny's, the fantastic and famous dish, moons over my hammy. Don't you? Rachel will know where my moon is. She'll say, your moon is in Venus next to Mercury with Jupiter behind them and Saturn going backwards. My moon is in Gemini, but Rachel doesn't know the degrees. I'm an 8th Dan black belt. Lol, 11 moon equals peach. Oh, yes. So we got the air sign right. I guess so. Is Gemini an air sign? If so, why? What animal is Gemini anyway? You know how Rachel's animal is sea goat and mine is a bull? What's Gemini animal? It's I forgot the name, so it's just my ass. Anybody know what a Gemini is? Virgo's a fish. A Gemini is twins. Twin what? Does it represent my two balls? The twins. Twin people? Identical twins? Fraternal twins? It seems like it doesn't, it's like, you get Pisces, it's a fish. And Cancer is a crab. Sagittarius. Is that the sea goat? Is Sagittarius or is it Capricorn? One of those two is a sea goat. Taurus is a bull. It seems like they should all be animals, accordingly. Why do some of them get to be different things? This doesn't seem right. Your moon is in Sagittarius, the centaur. The centaur I'm fine with. It's not a real animal, but it's an animal. Same with the sea goat. Not a real animal, but an animal. Now, crabs and fish obviously are real animals, as are bulls. Twins are not animals at all. You might as well just say person. That wouldn't be fair. Then it would be like, why do they get to be people, but we have to be animals? Crab cat. Yeah. Fear the crab cat. Hi, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Not a whole bunch is up. I'm thinking about, maybe not streaming for a ton longer. Not like I have a shit ton of other things to do. We'll be getting some funds on Friday, hopefully, Rachel. Enough to pay the water bill and go grocery shopping anyway. And then, now I mean the electric bill and go grocery shopping. We have till the end of the month to pay water bill. We have to wait till the end of next week for all the funds to go through. Now you got to listen to Gemini Dream by the Moody Blues. You know what, Jonathan Earl? I was saying earlier in this stream, maybe before we got here, how the Moody Blues are terrible and nobody should like them. Nights in white satin, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, meow, 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 meow. Oh, God. Can you not, please, Moody Blues? Can you just... Your music is neither moody nor blues. It's pretentious shit rock. Pretentious shit rock. That's what it is. Oh, you were here. Okay, good. Just want to make my opinion, which is, of course, not just my opinion, but the correct position on the Moody Blues clear. Namely, the Moody Blues are bad. You only know one song? Okay, fine. I only know Nights in White Satin, yeah. I'm not sure if I know really any songs. I've heard other songs of theirs on the radio before, back when I was a kid and listened to classic rock radio stations. And I always thought, ew, why is this band so terrible? The Who, do they have one good song? I think they have one good song, right? Well, I mean, they've got that Deaf, Dumb, and Blind kid sure plays a mean pinball. That's a pretty good song. What's another good Who song? Can anybody think of another good Who song? Letters I've written never meaning to send. Okay, Ruben R. I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about the Moody Blues. Okay? I don't believe I'm pretentious shit rock. But even if I am, that's fine. I'm appropriately unpopular. I'm not famous and am not respected by anybody. So that's appropriate to my failure. The Moody Blues, on the other hand, suck so much ass, but they are not experiencing failure appropriate to their suckiness. So it's, you know, the thing is, all we can complain about in life really is injustice. And it is unfortunate that terrible bands become successful. It demeans us all. But, you know, there are plenty of successful bands that are not terrible and deserve to be successful. Lots and lots of them. The Moody Blues is not one of them. Chicago is not one of them. You know, that Saturday in the Park song, it starts off so well, right? Saturday in the park, I think it was the 4th of July. So it's got that part, right? And that's good. You're like, oh, this song is pretty cool. I like this song. And then it goes into this part. People meowing, people meowing, people meow, 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 which is just terrible. And nobody wants to listen to that horrible song. Hootie and the Blowfish. Why did they ever become popular? They're terrible. They don't even, they sing that song. I only want to be with you. Nirvana's good. I don't like them that much, but they're good. You got to respect Nirvana. Tool, you should have no respect for. I'm not familiar with Filter. Tool is absolutely terrible. Oh yeah, I believe Eminem's an EHP. Well, good for you, show media. Well, then you should go live in Israel. Counting crows, you know. You're not familiar with Filter, Hey Man, Nice Shot? I'm not sure. I don't think so. What about Space Hogs? I'm not familiar with the Space Hogs either. Relatively speaking, it is safer in Israel than it is in America. Okay, well, that's fine. Okay, well, yeah, things can sound, a word can sound whatever you want it to sound to you, and there's not anything except just subjectivity. Like, you might also feel the same way about the word chew, like fruit chews. Fruit chews sounds kind of gross, you know. It sounds like kind of gross. Sounds like dirty words. Okay, well, chest my ass, then you're just being a little bit racist. And there's no reason to bring that vibe. You know what? That's not a very chill vibe. Okay. Kind of anti-chill. Okay, well, look. I don't mean to be getting between the Muslims and the Jews, but break it up, you guys. Have your fight someplace else. Not around here. Okay. Good to know, Rachel. Okay. Well, I'm not groupist in any way. I don't approve of any kind of groupism because it's always suggested that somehow you can know about an individual person based on your opinion of their group. That's never the case, so you're not going to get any, like, tacit or otherwise approval for your nonsense here. Yeah, well, I'll make an exception for a prosecutor who actually tried to behave sanely. Like there was a prosecutor recently in LA County that um, was elected that basically stopped prosecuting nonviolent stuff and drug crimes, which was good. I don't like groups either, you know, but I also don't. I also recognize that other individuals like me belong to a number of different group labels, whether we want to or not, right? Like I'm a male because that's a distinction that really exists. I have an X and a Y chromosome. I have two cats. I don't have any dogs. So I'm part of the population of cat owners, but not dog owners. You can articulate myriad different groups that I'm in, only some of them are bad. Regardless, I'm not defined by any of those groups I'm in. If I am a prosecutor, and I'm assuming I'm a standard prosecutor, right? That's like saying, um, it's like there's no good way to be a prison guard at Auschwitz, right? So if you're talking about, oh, these people are part of this organized crime ring, then you don't need to establish that you're you're objecting to a group they're in. You're objecting to the fact that they're in this organized crime ring. With prosecutors, it's a similar sort of thing. There are very, very few prosecutors, but a couple in the country that actually um, care about justice. What matters is you need to care about justice if you're a prosecutor or a defense attorney. So it's fine to critique prosecutors because you're critiquing people who take a job that involves making sure that people's lives are as ruined as possible if they run afoul of the law. Now, to some extent, obviously, we need prosecutors to prosecute actual crimes. The problem is that most of the crimes that prosecutors are prosecuting are going to be either drug crimes or maybe like vandalism or stuff like that, right? So, well, it's important to make sure that property owners have their day in court for things like vandalism. It's also the case that the prosecutor needs to think about justice as well. Like, you know, the same fine for me is not the same fine for a poor kid, right? We might find the same amount to be fair in terms of consequences for an outcome, but it's not the same impact on both parties at all. So, I think it's important for there to be some discretion for leniency. And most importantly, what I think needs to happen is there needs to be an end to people pleading guilty pre-trial with plea bargaining. If you're charging Meow with a crime and you want to offer Meow and Meow a plea to testify, I'm okay with that kind of plea bargaining. But the kind of plea bargaining that prosecutors normally use is as follows. Whatever you get arrested for, the prosecutors will, if you get arrested for simple assault, they'll say, if you don't plead to Meow, whatever they decide, then I will charge you with simple assault, assault with a deadly weapon, assault with a felony tear gas weapon, maybe even attempted murder, right? So the thing is, now they're saying if you plead to aggravated assault, you'll get 1 year, you might be able, 1 to 2 years, you might get off in 6 months. If you don't and you're found guilty of attempted murder, you'll be in jail for 20 to 30 years or something. So the person goes, well, shit, I don't believe I'm factually guilty of aggravated assault, but I don't want to take that risk. That's unfair leverage that prosecutors use as a fundamental mechanism of doing their job in almost every instance that renders them as a group dismissible, because if they cared about justice, they wouldn't do that. That's not fair leverage against a defendant, to threaten to overcharge them and hope that the jury finds them guilty of crimes that both parties know they're factually not guilty of, if they don't agree to give up their right to a jury trial. That kind of plea bargaining should be forbidden. Then we'd have to actually prosecute only those crimes that need to really be prosecuted. We couldn't be prosecuting frivolous nonsense. And, we wouldn't be able to have a bunch of drug laws, because every drug case would go to, it wouldn't work, right? Every drug case would go to jury trial, or the prosecutor would decline to prosecute. The prosecutor wants you to cop a plea so they don't have to do any work while still getting you guilty. It's ridiculous. The reason jury trial is protected and articulated in the Constitution is because it's needed to preserve justice. Okay, well, that's one theory of crime, Jonathan Earl, and you're not wrong that like trash attracts other trash. If one car on the street is broken into, there's a lot bigger chance another car on the street is going to be broken into, etc. I forget what they call that theory of crime, but the thing is, I'm not really talking about what police arrest people for. I'm talking about how prosecutors deal with people after they're arrested. So, there should be a standard punishment for a crime like, say, vandalism. And if you plead guilty, you can get that standard punishment, and the state can avoid a trial. If you don't feel like, if you know you're guilty, you're going to be found guilty, you want to avoid the hassle of trial, you just want to plead guilty, fine. Like, I just wanted to get out of Oklahoma and pay the fine when I got arrested in Oklahoma. I did not want to have to face a jury. But the thing is, there wasn't any plea bargaining involved either. The fine was I just paid the full fine, and that was it. I need to eat some food. I'll put this in the oven for 7.5 minutes, then I'll eat this ice cream sandwich to tide me over. All right. What day is today? Wednesday? So yeah, as long as prosecutors are empowered to do that and choose to do that, they are wicked people who don't care about justice. I understand the adversarial process. Both sides are supposed to give it their all or whatever. But the threats of overcharging is fundamentally an abusive technique, right? It's not fair. Not yet. There are a lot of crimes that cops should arrest people for. Prosecutors should prosecute, even if they're small crimes. But they need to be prosecuted fairly, which means either the plea occurs before trial and accept the standard punishment for that actual crime that they might have actually committed. Or it goes to trial. They shouldn't be able to leverage them into a guilty plea with plausible threats of life in prison for simple assault. It's fundamentally unfair. Well, I need something to tide me over. My mother used to say. In the status quo, the reason you can't enforce most laws like that is because prosecutors are abusive in pretrial stuff. So, if we got rid of that prosecutorial misconduct, which I consider it to be prosecutorial misconduct, but the courts don't consider it to be that. Oh, yeah. That's good air gutting. It's so good to get an air. Never seen an officer write a littering ticket? Well, you probably, every time you've seen somebody pulled over getting a ticket, have not paused to ask the cop, what are you writing them a ticket for? But I think most prosecutors I think you have a lot of ESTJ prosecutors who are just kind of like going through the motions without any intuition to make them understand what's most relevant and should be determinate, namely matters of justice. But it could be like sociopaths too, you know. Some sociopath of any type might want to be a prosecutor. I mean, it is a job that needs to be done. It's just that, I mean, really we should blame the courts for allowing that stuff to happen. Naturally, if you allow that stuff to happen, prosecutors who have, or assistant district attorneys or whatever, like, who have their career advancement predicated on number of guilty pleas extracted and who don't care about the criminals, just the victims, right? Because there are plenty of crimes for which there aren't even any victims, like all drug crimes. Like, I guess I don't blame the county for busting massive illegal weed grows in Mariposa County, because you can grow weed legally, but they choose to not sell to legal markets and go through the mechanisms and stuff. And accordingly, they don't take very good care of the land or properties that they're farming on and stuff. I guess they sell to the cartels or whatever. Because even though weed's legal in a lot of places, there's a lot of places where it still isn't legal. So there's going to be a black market available for it. Maybe not so much in the U.S. these days that it's super illegal, but certainly in other countries it's very illegal. All right, well, I'm waiting for my food to finish cooking. And I guess I'll pull another bong rip of this Gorilla Glue, which is, it's very stony. It's super sticky and quite stony. People are too PC, too ashamed to be real. I'm not politically correct. I'm correct about politics, but I'm not politically correct in the sense that I'm going along with someone else's whatever because that's what I'm supposed to do. So I'm not virtue signaling at all. I'm just describing what's correct. Well, let's see what's on TV. Let's take a gander. Let's take a gander at the ESPN. This will tell us what things are on today. What about hockey? Is it still preseason? It is. It's preseason. Preseason, schmree season. You know? We don't need your damn preseason. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, though. I'm going to check on my fantasy football teams. All right, so my first one called Talking with Fantasy People. Last week, I won 130 to 91. I'm 2-1. I've got Dak Prescott as my quarterback. Bijan Robinson is my starting running back. Josh Jacobs is my second running back. Then for wideouts, I got Brandon Ayuk. I put Rome Odunze in and took out Lad McConkey. I got Rashee Rice as one of my wideouts. For tight end, I've got Cole Kmet because Travis Kelce's injured, I think. I have Kelce. Kelce's been a disappointment this season in terms of fantasy points. But yeah, I got Cooper Kupp. He's the one who I have to bench because he's out. He's going to Germany. Somebody said, I think. George Kittle, questionable. That's the tight end I have in this team. Yes, I do also have Lad McConkey. But he's on the bench. Because you know what? I just wasn't very impressed with his performance last time he played on my team. Which may or may not have been last week. Alright, well, we've got a manicotti right here. Let's go eat it with our mouths. I've experimented with eating a lot of different ways. And in the end, I settled on, with my mouth, as the best way to eat. I've got a fork. I've got a food. I brought my mouse with me unnecessarily. Let's go back in the living room. And we'll discuss more important news about my fantasy football teams. I'll also check the chat here, see what's going on. Let me bring it up. Cow. Oh, McCaffrey is going to Germany. Cooper Kupp should be healthy soon enough. Glad to know you went Kittle and not Kelsey, but I don't love doubling down on the Niners offense with him and Ayuk. That's not a bad team, right? Let's look at my other fantasy team. Next is the Fun Friends Gang. This team is also 2-1, and I lost my last week's matchup by just 2 points. How sad, 91-89. So this team didn't perform very well last week, and I'm not sure if it's going to perform well this week either, because I've got Jalen Hurts as my quarterback, Zamir White is my running back. I got Carson Steele as my other running back. After Pacheco got hurt, I dropped him and just picked up their backup running back. I got Tyreek Hill, Rome Odunze, because I have basically my only other choice for that other wideout is Jacoby Myers. So I went with Rome Odunze. I do have Travis Kelce on this team, and he is playing this week. He's not injured. I was thinking about Kittle. And I have... I should put Jacoby Myers there. I'm not sure whether I should put at flex Jacoby Myers or Cole Kmet. I have the Bears defense and special teams and the Jets kicker. And Pacheco's on injured reserve. Okay. Now let's look at Rachel's team. Rachel's radical team, it's called. She won her last matchup and scored 120 points, and the other team only scored like 37 points. So she's got Mahomes. Oh, that's right. She's got Mahomes. I've got hers. She's got Mahomes, James Cook as her main running back, Aaron Jones as her second running back, Tyreek Hill as a wideout, Jaden Reed is questionable, so I'm going to need to replace him for her as the other wideout. I don't like playing people that are questionable because I don't know if I'm going to be paying attention enough, and if they turn out not to play, then if I haven't switched it already, then, I'll switch that with Buffalo wideout Khalil Shacker. Khalil Shacker. Well, she also has Romeo Dubes, Green Bay wideout, and Jerry Jeudy, Cleveland wideout on the bench. But Jaden Reed is questionable, so we'll bench him, and we'll just put in Khalil Shakur. Cole Kmet, Lad McConkey is her flex player. Bears defense, and Jake Moody is her kicker. She also has Cooper Kupp, George Kittle. Both of them are on the bench because they're either out or questionable. Zamir White's on her bench. Caleb Williams is on her bench. Yeah. So in the current matchup, the projections favor the other guy by quite a bit. The projected totals are 132 to 109 with Rachel losing. But those projections can be wrong, Rachel does have a couple key injuries. And sometimes that's just the time for your bench player to step up. The only position where Rachel has an advantage is kicker. Because, it gives you check marks showing. But like I said, just because that's what's projected doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. A lot of time projections are wrong. Now, the Dodgers and the Padres play at 7:10, but I don't think I'll be able to see that game because I don't have Major League Baseball's season ticket. Oakland at Texas is 6:40. San Francisco at Arizona is 6:40 as well. I could watch either of those games if I wanted to. The Giants are 79-79 and 14 and a half games out of first place. Meanwhile, Arizona, probably too late for them to do anything now, right? Let me look at the playoffs and stuff here for MLB. Let's see, standings. All right, so the American League East, we've got the Yankees and the Orioles are both 100% guaranteed to make the playoffs. The Blue Jays have been eliminated. The Guardians have clinched the Central Division. The White Sox have been eliminated. The Astros have clinched the division. The Mariners have nothing next to their name. It means they could still maybe make the playoffs. They have a 2.9% chance of making the playoffs. The Rangers, Athletics, and Angels are all eliminated. The National League, you've got the Phillies having clinched. The Mets still in the chase with a 77.5% chance of making the playoffs. The Braves still in the chase with a 70% chance of making the playoffs. The Nationals and Marlins have been eliminated. In the Central, the Brewers have clinched. Everybody else is eliminated. Cubs, Cardinals, Reds, and Pirates are all eliminated. And in the National League West, the Dodgers and Padres have clinched playoff berths. The Giants and Rockies have been eliminated. And the Diamondbacks have a 53% chance of making the playoffs. However, if the Athletics sweep them, I bet that goes way down. So, when do we play them? Oh, that's the Giants. Sorry, the Giants are playing the Diamondbacks. The Giants have a chance to play spoiler. Texas, on the other hand, is already eliminated. So, it's a pointless game tonight between the Athletics and the Rangers. So it goes, so it goes. Lord Almighty, so it goes. And that's one to grow on. For Eric's first team, A minus. Eric's second team, C. Rachel's team, A. Well, I'm fine with those grades. Hertz is great. Zamir White is awful. Hill is tough because of Tia's concussion. Kelsey is overrated in fantasy football. Bears D is great. Overall, this is not a good team. Well, Dead Boy Klaus, sometimes you win some, you lose some, they say. Yeah, the Miami offense may be less prolific than expected given the quarterback being out probably for the season. But, get the right journeyman, sign the right journeyman who's home for a year or something. You can find somebody. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I would. Here I am. In fact, I've got some wonderful news for you. The neighbors across the street whose dog barked and who yelled at their kids all the time have moved away. And new people have moved in and taken down the trespassers will be shot sign. I mean,
Hi,
hey, darling. Right, that's the problem is even if he does come back, once you start, the more concussions you get, the easier they are to get. So I think it's a bad idea for him to keep playing, but even if he does, he'll probably get a fifth concussion quick enough and be out for the rest. And then he'll be done, because he'll realize, like, I couldn't even play, like, for 2 games before I got another concussion. If you want to concuss me, you got to get with my friends. It's pretty good. It's better than bad, anyway. Appy says, I'm 26 and alone. Sometimes I feel like a loser, but mostly I'm afraid to handle a relationship. Well, Appy, what do you mean by that? What are you afraid of happening? You're afraid of not treating the other person well, them not treating you well? You don't think you can be faithful? What do you mean by that? To handle. And hello, by the way, and sorry I didn't see your comments sooner. Happy. Khalil Shakir is great. Okay, keep that in mind. Well, I think I'm about done streaming here. I know Rachel was hopeful I'd continue streaming, so I did longer than I would have otherwise, but I think I'm about ready to watch some TV. And, go to bed again at some point. Try to get some more sleep. It's like, I stayed in bed a long time last night. I sort of half slept most of the night, but I didn't feel like I was really sleeping. Not like full blast sleeping. It's important to get enough sleep, obviously. If it were the case that everybody could just stay awake all the time doing stuff and not get tired, I'm sure they would. See you later, Dat Boy Klaus. So I'm just gonna finish pulling a couple bowls here before I go. What will I watch, you're asking me? Well, let me see. don't think there's anything in particular coming out today that I want to watch, but I can get caught up watching YouTube videos or something. Sometimes I watch like sports highlights videos. I like this channel called Baseball Doesn't Exist. I think it's a really good channel. $50 sets Diddy abuse allegations docuseries at Netflix. It's a complex narrative spanning meow. Diddy's children addressed late mother Kim Porter's sudden 2018 death in a social media post. Condemn horrific conspiracy theories about their mother's death. Russell Brand recalls very intense Diddy taking him on an enforced holiday. You can't say no to him. Well, I hope he goes down so hard. Oh my God. When I read these headlines, they're just horrible. I can't even read them out loud. There's a reason Diddy's famous friends have stayed silent amid his arrest. PR experts say it's the best. Well, I hope he never gets out of jail, frankly. I think he's a horrible, horrible person. Of course, I don't know exactly what all happened. I heard enough to believe that he's a horrible, horrible person. I bet that docu-series is going to be a big hit for Netflix. Okay, well, I mean, it's perfectly reasonable to think that to be suspicious of their father regarding the death of their mother because everyone's just learning what a horrible person he is now. Russell Brand recalled Sean Diddy Combs taking on an enforced holiday while working on their 2010 movie Get Him to the Greek. The controversial comedian got candid about taking a trip to Vegas with the now disgraced rapper in a resurfaced interview with Blacktree TV from May 2010. Diddy is new to me, right? He looked after me and took me on an enforced holiday to Vegas. A British actor said, he's a very intense man because I think he comes from nothing and now he's very, very powerful. People that do stuff like that, they're intense. Now, I like him. He's very influential. Brand explained, adding the Combs is difficult to say no to. Say that you don't want to do something and Diddy does want you to do it. It's really hard not to do that thing. You still do it because you think, don't upset him, he's an influential person.
Kind of sounds like, I don't know.
I mean, the kind of people who end up talking to Diddy are not people like me. Right?
No. And I forget. They were talking about some celebrity who like could have been at a party but not know of like what goes on in certain rooms. I could believe that if you go to a party like once.
Yeah, I mean, I could believe that too. I'm not sure that at all that everybody who was at any of Diddy's parties was involved in all this nefarious stuff. It's certainly very plausible that plenty of people went to those parties and were not involved in any of the nefarious stuff because it didn't happen in the front rooms, but in the back rooms.
Right, and like there like are some people who maybe went to one party, felt the vibes were off, like whoa, like something is going on here, and then not go again.
Right. Makes sense. Do any of these old viral videos matter? No. Multiple resurfaced clips of Diddy have gone viral since his arrest. Ashton Kutcher's quotes.
Wow, okay, I've got a lot. I can't.
I've got a lot I can't tell. I can't tell that one either. Actually, cycling through them, there was one moment, so it's not really a party story, but our relationship was bizarre, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, you can't punk me. And I was like, everyone's on the table, he said. Not me, I'm not on the table. And then we became fast friends and we used to hang out and watch football together. And obviously attend these parties together, Ashton Kutcher. Or you wouldn't have said, I can't tell that one, I can't tell that one either, right? So hopefully Ashton Kutcher goes down. That would be great. There's a reason Diddy's famous friends have stayed silent amid his arrest. PR experts say it's the best strategy. Now his famous friends, associates, and business partners are being scrutinized. Two PR experts say they would advise their clients to stay silent. After decades of throwing lavish parties and surrounding himself with musicians, models, actors, and royals, Diddy is locked up. Combs is a super rich, influential figure in the music industry with a vast network of connections. Diddy's empire began to crumble when Ventura sued Combs last year, accusing him of rape and abuse. Although they reached a settlement one day after the lawsuit was filed, Ventura's bold stroke seemed to break the seal. Diddy has since been sued by 11 more people alleging assault, sexual misconduct, and other crimes. There's been no suggestion from prosecutors that other celebrities will be charged in the case, although U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said in response to a question for Business Insider last week that nothing is off the table. Still, onlookers are hungry for more information about Combs' social circle, including but not limited to who still supports him, who might be forced to testify, who severed ties with the proclaimed bad boy for life, and who barely knew him in the first place. A photo can only tell us so much about a relationship, after all.
Mm-hmm.
But as celebrities in question are listening to their PR teams, it's unlikely we will get the answers we crave.
I don't like that.
Dragged in. Diddy's rich and powerful friends such as Jay-Z could be forced to testify in disgraced rapper's sex trafficking trial. P. Daddy's famous friends could be subpoenaed and asked to testify if it goes to trial. which it will, because they're not going to offer him really any kind of deal.
Like, this is a case where you want good prosecutors.
Oh yeah, for sure, because it's a real crime.
Right.
Prosecutors should prosecute real crimes. And it's like there's no need to exaggerate the charges here. He's guilty of all these big charges.
Mm-hmm.
He's already pled not guilty. So,
He's pled not guilty?
yeah. Which is to be expected, right? Because if he's pleading guilty, that means there is no trial. We want there to be a trial.
Oh, I see, I see.
His inner circle has included Jay-Z, Beyonce, Rick Ross, Usher, Justin Bieber, Kim Kardashian, Kanye West, Leonardo DiCaprio, Pharrell, and Snoop Dogg were in attendance at his 50th birthday. Former prosecutor Mia said Jay-Z and other celebrities can be subpoenaed, but they will almost certainly assert their Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination and refuse to testify.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the thing is, people who participated in the sex acts could especially be afraid because they can also be charged with sex trafficking or prostitution, depending on whether they use threats or force against the victims.
Oh.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
evidence.
well, what this doesn't mention, though, is that they'll threaten to charge or offer to not charge Jay-Z, depending on whether he's willing to testify.
So, like, they'll be like, but charge him with sexual misconduct and that stuff, or?
No, but it's federal charges. So those kind
federal.
of charges are state charges, and I'm not sure what the various statute of limitations on various crimes are, but I don't doubt that if somehow Diddy were to be found not guilty in this state trial, he would be immediately arrested. I mean, in this federal trial, he would be immediately arrested by the state of New York or wherever else he held these parties to prosecute him for whatever crimes they have. The feds have evidence on, then they'd be willing to give it to state prosecutors, no problem. But there's zero chance that he's going to get off. It's just impossible. They have way too much evidence.
So, could the videos that were taken at the parties, like, incriminate certain people?
Yeah, depending on what they show. Horrible, horrible fucker.
Yeah, really.
All right, I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks for being here, everybody who's still here, and have a great evening.